Good morning and welcome back to Planet Althistory. Today we are going to discuss what if the Saar Protectorate became independent. After World War II, Germany was not only divided in two different states, but we could argue that it was divided in almost three different states. The Saar Protectorate wasn't totally independent, and nobody really planned or envisioned it as an independent state. Hell, not even the French did. The Saar Protectorate, while culturally German of course, was economically attached to France. France wanted to get reparations from the war and used the Saar economy for that. The Saar region had a lot of coal, and the French took advantage of it. There were also tendencies within the Saarland that actually supported an independence. Mainly one politician was in favor of such a thing, Johannes Hoffmann, the minister-president of the Saar Protectorate. Hoffmann proved to be a very competent politician because he brought an end to the French occupation of the Saarland, and this in the 50s, and his policies made it that the protectorate became almost independent. He was in favor of separatism from Germany, but at the same time he was in favor of an European unity, as he said. Not a European Union, but a European unity. This is very important to note. You see, we are in a time where the European Union was in the making. Sure, it wasn't yet the European Union that we know and that we hate or love, whichever side you are, but the European coal and steel community was just about to be created. The goal was it to make the members codependent from each other to avoid a war on European soil. Saarland was a very industrial part of Germany, but not as important as the Rhineland, of course. Later on, however, there was a referendum and 67% voted in favor of reunification with Western Germany, also known as Kleine Wiedervereinigung. With someone like Hoffmann in charge and the context of European unity, quote unquote, an independent Saarland doesn't seem far-fetched. So what if all of that changed? What if the Saar Protectorate became independent? First of all, we need to find a plausible point of divergence. Let's just say that the people in the Saarland, they would be very suspicious of Western Germany, and they actually like their standards of life. Most of them wouldn't see why they would need to reunify if at the end all of Europe would become a unity, as promised by Hoffmann. We could also go down another road where Hoffmann and his government would somehow manipulate the outcome, or Germany and France would reapproach each other, but Konrad Adenauer would agree that an independent Saarland would ensure peace and stability. This would give the people the message that they would not be welcome within Western Germany. The outcome would slightly favor, but just slightly favor an independent Saarland. But the people in there, they would still consider themselves to be German and talk German, just like the Austrians did a few years ago. And even someone like Hoffmann, who favored separatism, he cannot ignore this, and neither can the French. Saarland would have a good chance of actually gaining a very respectable standard of life, becoming a very wealthy country. The industries were still very important, and the Saarland could trade within the European coal and steel community, and it would become a full member of it. Moreover, the Saar Protectorate would have voted then for the Saar status, or the Saar Statute. This means that the Saar Protectorate would technically be under the Western European Union rule, which was founded in 1954. Hoffmann could symbolically become the first commissioner to rule the Saarland, and Germany would thus still have a little say over the affairs of the Saarland. Saarland would, however, not stay economically close to France, but due to the referendum outcome, they would also try to form some economic union or even alliance with Western Germany. This could be seen as excellent compromise, and France would still have a say over the Saarland, thanks to the Western European Union. Hoffmann would thus stay much longer in charge and actually rule the Saarland in a competent manner. But he would have critiques accusing him of an authoritarian style and that Saarland would be a Demokratur, a mix between the German words for democracy and dictatorship. The results in 1955 would also change, and his CVP party could win once again almost 50% of the votes. I honestly have no clue how this Europeanization would happen in the Saarland, but I assume that elections would still happen. Perhaps we could see a similar arrangement as in Andorra, where even though the French president and the bishop somewhere of Spain would be the heads of state, elections in Andorra, they still happen. There is an Andorran prime minister and an Andorran government. Perhaps the party that wins the election in Saarland would negotiate with the representatives of the Western European Union on who would become the next head of state or commissioner. In that case, I believe that someone like Edgar Hector might become the successor to Hoffmann because he was very much pro-independence, one of the only members of the CVP party who didn't switch sides, and he even left the Saarland once it was clear that it would join Germany. Moreover, after his political career in OTL, he even worked in Brussels for the European institutions. So who would be better suited than someone like him to rule a Europeanized Saarland? The European institutions would start moving from Brussels, Luxembourg and Strasbourg to Saarland as well. Now, a compromise between those states wouldn't be necessary anymore because the Saarland got the Saarstatut, and it would be Europeanized as a consequence. We could see more institutions evolving in Saarland, and the idea of a European Union, it could in a way happen much faster or become more concrete with a Europeanized state, because this state, this Saarland, would become the prime example of what people imagined as the future of the European Union. The 60s would also see a rise in wages, wealth, and social programs. But as we all know, this wouldn't be permanently. The 60s would already show some signs of weaknesses, and then in the 70s, there would be the steel crisis. With an Europeanized Saarland, would there be a different policy than in OTL? It is possible that car factories would appear in Saarland, but it is also possible that European institutions would serve as an important employer. Who would be employed? Well, Europeans in general, and not only local people. And this would create a lot of anger, and it is possible that depending on how badly the crisis could be managed, that the predecessor of the European Union would be blamed for it. The steel crisis would not only be a test for smaller states like Luxembourg and Saarland, but for the whole concept of a potential European Union or European unity. Honestly, I believe that even though the Saarland would manage to somehow get out from this crisis, just as Luxembourg for instance, the European institutions, they would be seriously discredited, and some form of transformation could happen. Perhaps we could just see a customs union and a European alliance, or we could see an European Union light version, but very, very light, with no commissioner, for instance. Some voices in Saarland would want to join Western Germany because they think that they could not survive on their own. And some Western German politicians could be open to it, but at the same time, it would be also a taboo, because it would be considered as similar as saying that Austria should join Western Germany. And people came actually to accept this new situation. And even the Soviets wouldn't be very happy about the reunification of the Saarland and Western Germany, fearing that this might spark some unrest in Eastern Germany. Remember, we are in the situation of the Cold War. The 80s would see a transformation in the Saarland where it could function similarly to Luxembourg, or it could have a different economic sector that would drive the economy in there. The German reunification would be very doubtful. Let me tell you this, the small reunification between Western Germany and the Saarland, it served as an inspiration or even a model for the reunification between Western and Eastern Germany. In this timeline, however, skepticism would be much higher, and as a result, Western and Eastern Germany would never unite. This world would see a more fragmented Europe. This Europe would have an alliance and economic system, but would never even have the Euro, the European Union as we know, and Eastern Europe could also follow a different path. Will Europe in this world have more disputes and face troubles? Or will it actually be more democratic and have the Saarland as not only the new model for Europeanized states, but actually for smaller independent states around the world? And that's where we leave it for now. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, support me also on Patreon, and join my forum, forum.planetalthistory.ga. Until next time on Planet Alt History.